because today we've got something special in store for you. The grandest spectacle, the greatest show of all, Johnny Bang Bang Show. Here's your host, Robert Gifford.
That's right, it's me. I am the one and only. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, my name is Robert Gifford. Johnny Bang Bang is the game, and I'm sitting here with no stranger to danger, Dustin Borton, my man, my brother from another mother. How are we doing over there, bud? How you doing?
We are doing good, just enjoying this Sunday night, the snow.
Oh my God, it snowed in Michigan today. You know, if you talk about two things that went against me today, it was definitely the weather. And for those of you that don't know, Dustin and I are in separate rooms, separate buildings tonight because I got hit with COVID. And yes, it's a positive case. I'm doing my best to hold it together. I'm going to give you the best hour of my life, Dustin, and then I'm going to shut it down and probably fall asleep for about 2 or 3 days. So the things I do for you, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's make the best out of it.
For sure. He's going to have little kiddos running in and out of his room trying to use the bathroom, even though they don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, I hope I put a stop to that. We'll see.
For those of you that don't know right now, Dustin and I are doing our best Eddie Kingston's impressions right now. We do have money for heat, but, we have our particular reasons for why we're rocking our dome caps today. Dustin, a lot of things happened over the past week. As always, we meet on Sundays. Last week we kind of just talked about all of the normal shows that happen throughout the week. You got Raw and NXT, and then you got Dynamite and SmackDown and Rampage and the whole thing. This week we had the honor of a pay-per-view, so it gives us a little bit more to dive into. And overall, I didn't get a chance to watch it. We're going to be honest with our viewers all the time. I have read every single article on the pay-per-view that I possibly can. I've watched as many clips on it as I possibly can. I know that's not necessarily fair to our audience to give them a totality scope of like judging the pay-per-view, but just from what you've gathered and from what you've seen, what was your opening perception of Full Gear as a whole?
I thought it was pretty good. Quite a few matches. The matches, I felt like most of them delivered pretty well. They had some more hardcore tables, ladders, chairs, thumbtacks, things like that thrown into it. And then you had, I think you had some really good technical wrestling in there. I think they kicked it off with, or hit it off with a bang at the end with Hangman winning the title.
The kicker of the night, Hangman Page, and whether or not that was the right move or what Vince says, the best move for business. It's interesting. We'll dive into that here in a few seconds. But my overall thoughts after reading what people were saying is it sounds like the show started off on a real high, and then there were some lulls in the middle, and then there was this real big high at the end with the crowd there getting more probably of what they wanted. They wanted to see Adam Hangman Page go over. He got over, and according to the crowd, it sounds like he went over as well that way. So it sounds like another win for AEW as a whole. Lot of matches on the card, like you said. I kind of gotten used to that, Dustin. It's kind of like AEW wants to pack a big punch as much as they can. It's just to deliver as many different names and personalities as they possibly can on the card. I wonder if that will be a detriment to them or if that's just the style that people like. WrestleMania used to kind of build their card really slow, and then there was like these gigantic builds, and then like what happened was you would have these matches, and you'd have like, I'm trying to give an example off the top of my head. There would be like Shawn Michaels Taker 1 at WrestleMania 25. They end up fighting, and it's the best wrestling match of all time, in my opinion, but in a lot of people's as well. WrestleMania 25 Taker Shawn 1. They stole the night, and then all of a sudden Cena and Orton and Triple H had to follow that, and they didn't space their card out well enough. AEW doesn't seem to really care a lot about the way they put their card together. Or maybe they do, but a lot of times it's just, let's just keep going on this adrenaline ride. I'm not sure how the card was laid out last night, but I know with them it's like punch after punch after punch. Do you know what I'm talking about at all? Did you get a chance to watch WrestleMania 25 and see how dead the crowd was after the Taker Shawn match?
Yeah, I mean, I think they gave all their energy to that match, and there's lots of things that go into that. I mean, either way, no matter who you are, to follow Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I don't see it playing out any other way unless they were the main match and
Yeah.
they don't have titles. So, unfortunately, and to me though, that's some of the situations I see with WWE, and I'm like, yes, I understand the titles important, right? And that means you're the king. But at some point, you got to be like, okay, look, like these guys have deserved this spot one last time, it may be, right? Together, give them their moment, right? And I think they built that up. But I see both sides to it. But yeah, I think for an AEW standpoint for me, I feel like they just want to give you wrestling matches.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of like mid, in WWE, you'll have like a lot of mid interviews in the back and different things like that happen and all this kind of things. And then they'll get to
Filler.
the
Let's
next
call it
match,
filler.
right?
Call it
Exactly.
filler. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And where AEW just the match is done and then they go right into the next promo or build up and then the match starts. I mean, there's not really in between. Um,
Seems really easy, doesn't it? Seems like a simple format to follow. I don't know.
yeah,
No, I
I
was just
don't
gonna
I don't
say
think
that.
they
I was
really
just gonna
do it.
say that like it seems like a simple format, but I wonder if it's just that I don't know. That crowd was pretty wild for Page and Omega last night, so maybe what I'm about to say isn't the end all be all, but it just feels like sometimes maybe they don't have enough build up into their characters and stuff yet to have those big matches like a Taker and Shawn. But I don't think that's a fair statement. What I would think with Taker and Shawn was that maybe they didn't anticipate that they were going to have the backing behind the crowd as much as they did. And that's maybe why the
Yeah,
card went the way it did. I think they definitely learned from that because if you look at WrestleMania 26's card, it was definitely balanced and throughout the entire night. Um, but enough about the card. Let's dive into some of the winners and losers. You said it was a high. Uh, Adam Hangman Page ended up defeating Kenny Omega. And what everybody was saying was a classic wrestling match, a really good story told. A lot of people are using the words perfect storytelling. What do you think? Did they get it right? And is the company in better hands now, having Adam Hangman Page as the face of the place, being the champion?
yeah. I mean, I like it. It's hard. I mean, Kenny Omega. I mean, he's a lot of people have called him, the best wrestler of this, generation and things like that. Like he's highly renowned in the indie scene, now in AEW. Um, you know, Magazines rate him, number one wrestler out of all companies. So to have Hangman Page go in there, I like it because he's kind of like a day one in AEW. He's been working his way up there for a while.
Right,
Um, he's got the crowd behind him. I don't think Kenny Omega he doesn't need the belt. I mean, I think his skills and his wrestling stand for himself. I think he's still obviously in the title picture. I could see them they have a lot of history, so there's a lot to bank off storylines and things like that within them too. So I like it. I was talking to one of my buddies today, Eric, and he kind of said, well, don't you think Daniel Bryan's he's number one contender now? So where does that kind of leave it, right? Now, are we going to see Bryan Danielson versus Hangman Page? Is that next? So I don't know. I think it throws some dynamic into it. I like it. There's also things in there. I think that they're kind of might be going a different route with. Um, the gosh, I always forget the name. The
Young
brothers, the
Bucks.
yeah, Young Bucks. I don't know why I
Yeah,
can never remember their names. The Young Bucks in there, and what happened with them, and kind of getting like the nod to Adam Hangman Page, and I don't know. There's a lot that goes into there. I think they got a lot of avenues. Really depends, but I thought it was a good match. I thought it had really good. There was times in there. I mean that even being a wrestling fan, you watching for a long time, I thought it was over on some of them. I was very shocked that they kicked out of them. The one winged angel, him using his own move against him. Nobody kicks out of that, and then
right.
he kicks out of it. I thought there was really good storytelling. I mean, I thought it was a great match.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like we haven't seen enough of AEW and how they book things to kind of have a formula yet. You know what I mean? Where like in WWE, a lot of times they have to kind of book against their own booking to give you a surprise because we've been formalized for so long on how they're going to do things. If it's a B pay-per-view, they might just get through it and there might not be a lot of surprises, which is why we get super amped for the kind of the big four, because we know that like, okay, anything can happen tonight. Where in an AEW pay-per-view right now, it kind of feels like anything can happen all the time. And it's because they're
Yeah.
only doing so many pay-per-views throughout the year. They're only going to do one every 2 or 3 months. And that, a lot of people say, might be the better model for the fan. But for the business, it's hard to argue with having a pay-per-view every month.
100%.
As a fan, and that's what we are fans, that might be the better route. Seeing what WWE does on a weekly broadcast of their shows, I'm not sure that Raw can sustain a 3-month span without having a pay-per-view. But maybe it would be better if they built up some of their cards, like a pay-per-view almost night on their programming. That might be better. I don't know. But AEW with Adam Hangman Page, let me just say this. I think it's the right play because he's a fan favorite. I'm not a fan of AEW always giving the fans what they want, because it doesn't necessarily mean that the fans are always right. And that's where I defend Vince, is that what's best for your company, what's best for the story. I think what happened with Vince Russo in the WCW was they got to a point where they were always trying to appease the fans. And that sounds like an ideal thing on paper because it looks good on TV. The problem is that there's no loyalty to anybody. There's no longevity with anything. So I think Adam Hangman Page going forward, he's a good face, which it's hard to have companies that have good face champions. He's a legitimate one. And I think with what AEW has done is they've said be damned with good guys versus bad guys all the time. We'll have anybody fight each other, and we'll just tell the story off of whoever's next. And if Daniel or Bryan Danielson is next, and Adam Hangman Page is next, they're just going to tell the story of good guy versus good guy. Unless the Young Bucks do something, but I can't see. I think that's a storyline to kind of distract us for the next 3 months before we get to Bryan Danielson. I think it's going to be Bryan Danielson and Page versus the Young Bucks for a while, something like that to kind of stretch this out. That's where I see it going. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
I don't know. I think Bryan Danielson's going to turn heel eventually, though.
you already think that.
I mean, I don't necessarily think it's going to be like right now. I think that eventually that they will turn him heel. I think once they get him, I think they'll probably give him a title reign or so, like let him be on top for a little bit. And then I think they'll switch him to heel just to be able to probably push, a little bit guys a little bit more. Because, I mean, what does Bryan Danielson really have to prove at this point? You know what I mean? He's been pretty much on top of the business for multiple years now. And, at some point he still has a neck to worry about, right? His
Yeah.
neck's still not 100%. He's getting up there in age, family, things like that. So I don't know. I think there's a lot that goes into it, but I think that they will turn him heel. I think it's going to be coming probably to push like a younger talent. But I don't know. It's kind of really hard to tell because, like you said, a lot of the times, in my opinion, WWE is predictable. You can see the move before the move, right? And so
Yeah.
when the surprises do happen in WWE, it's like, holy crap, because you didn't see that one coming, right? The Hardy Boys coming back in WrestleMania when Big E and the New Day introduced them. Nobody thought the Hardy Boys were coming back.
Yeah.
And the place exploded because
I was there.
nobody
It was
knew.
insane, stupid. To be honest
Oh,
with you, I knew the Hardy Boys were popular, but I didn't know they were that level. And I'm like, this is insane. It made me scream harder. I was like, oh my God.
right, absolutely. And it's those kind of things. But I think with your point of giving and taking, giving the fans what they want all the time, I agree. You can't do it all the time, right? You have to give them a little bit, pull it back, and kind of not let them give it. So then eventually, when they do get what they want, you get that reaction that you want,
Yeah.
So I agree to that logic.
Well, let me just kind of we'll put a little bow on it for now. The last question I'll ask is: do you think that 3 months from now, and think about where we're going to be in 3 months, we'll be in WrestleMania season. We'll be 3 months from now, we'll be leading up to Royal Rumble. We'll be leading up to unfolding some storylines. So, like in 3 months, are they going to have Bryan Danielson as the new champion to kind of compete with WWE's WrestleMania run? Or are they going to keep it on Hangman Page and see if he moves the needle? Because I don't believe he's moving the needle right now, but if they do storytelling right and they get enough backing behind him, he might be a big player for them because he is an AEW guy, homegrown as much as homegrown can be because he's been there since day one. So
Yeah.
what do you think of that? Do you think this is a short-lived run for Page, or is this got some legs to it? What do you think?
No, I think it's a short run. I don't think it's going to be, a week, 2 weeks, right? I think there's going to be a little bit, but I agree. I think by WrestleMania season, we start building up for that. I think it'll be on Daniel Bryan by then. I think it's
Okay.
only a matter of time.
Fair enough. Well, let's see. Let's dive into some other things that took place on the show. We had Paige take over the place of the face. Let's talk about, if we can, CM Punk versus these domes we're wearing, man. This Eddie Kingston. Did the way they told the story kind of more of a just a brawlers match? Really, really violent. Is that kind of the way you thought it should have been?
I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be technical. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things that they could either do two things. They could go in there and just try to do some, just your basic moves, your basic wrestling match. They had to spice it up somehow, right? They had all
Right.
this anchor. They had this big build up. You can't just go in there and really just have like a normal old match, right? The way that the tensions were running high, and there's past real things that were involved in that. I think you had to go out there and show some just true grit and just get out there and lay it out on the line, if you will. And I don't think the whole CM Punk busting his head open was a plan. Okay, from when I watched it back, I think he missed his hand from what it looks like, and it
Yeah.
looks like he just he ate it. Which okay, I think
Hey.
it's one of those kind of situations where I think it helped.
Oh, it definitely helped. It always adds to the look of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the full face, everything. Now it looks like a brawl, right? Now it looks like these guys are just whooping each other's ass, right? And I mean they were for the most part,
I
but the
always
end,
Yeah, I always feel like something like that happens. You might try to, it's like, imagine buying a brand new pair of shoes. Okay. You get a brand new pair of shoes, and then all of a sudden you're kind of tiptoeing on every part of the sidewalk that has maybe some dirt on it. You're kind of going around it. And then all of a sudden you get that first scuff, and you're like, forget it. Let's just dive into this. Right. And then you just don't care the rest of the day. Right. Same thing with a car. First time you get a car, we're not eating in the car. Nobody's eating in the car. And then all of a sudden you drop that first thing of ketchup on the seat, and you're like, forget it. Let's just eat in the car. I don't care. I think a lot of times wrestlers, they're like, the chops and everything are a little bit softer. Everything's a little bit not as aggressive as you might like it by nature. And then something happens like that elevates a match, like, forget it. Let's just go after this. Let's just do it. And I think that's kind of what took place in that match, because it did elevate the match to another level. And I will ask you this. CM Punk got the win. Is that the right call? Is that should they have had this storyline continue? And it looks like they might, because at the end, CM Punk went to
yeah.
extend his hand of respect, and Eddie Kingston did, walked away from it. This is a two-part question, Dustin. Is it best for business? Because I'm always on the end of business, baby. I like to talk the show. You know what I mean? Is it best for business for CM Punk to have won? And is it best for business for them to continue CM Punk in a storyline with Eddie Kingston?
Yeah, I think CM Punk should have won. I think he comes out top of that match. I don't think I don't know if it would really help him to beat CM Punk. I think he's got work to do on his end, really, before the fans really accept him. And but I think that they have this feud. I think they have enough there, enough background. I think that lead up really brought them to a different light with each other in that match. So I think they continue it. I think they have Kingston come back, and he gets a nod, and then they maybe they have the final one being the third match, whoever wins that, and then they maybe move on from there. But with Moxley being out and things like that, I kind of think that, you kind of just steer him have some matches with CM Punk. Obviously, you can't have, I don't know how many times you can have those kind of matches. But I think that you give at least Eddie Kingston a nod. I thought that he did pretty good in the match. I will say this: they both need to work on the cardio. I mean, it was so. I felt like it was good, but if it would have been 5 minutes shorter,
Yeah.
I felt like it would have been a pretty great match. But that
That's
last 5 minutes, I felt like it just dropped. And I don't know.
That's the part that I talk about where I think there's too much creative control. Look, again, I'm coming from a place that wants to see WWE be doing better, so I'm always comparing, and I probably need to stop. But I think CM Punk, there's not a lot of people that can probably tell him, dude, your cardio, you're out of shape. You know what I mean? There's probably not a lot of people that can get into his ear and have him listen to that and actually do something about it. And he probably is stubborn enough that he thinks that he's still kind of killing it on all cylinders, or maybe he's not. I don't know. But that's the sense I get from it. If that match is, like you said, 5 minutes shorter, it tightens the screws up that much more, and I think there's no lull period in that, and that match gets a better grade at the end of it. Storytelling is great, but you also want to not be at any moment thinking, maybe I should hit the bathroom now, or maybe I should go make another sandwich. You don't want those moments in it. You want to stay in that match the whole time. And I think there's a lot of times where, that's the case in CM Punk matches. They're just a little bit too long. But I will say this, though. I will say this to you, sir. If they continue this Eddie Kingston storyline, I think it could lead to a Jon Moxley CM Punk feud down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which would be a good transition, because you had CM Punk just 2 weeks ago praising Jon Moxley for going to rehab, working on himself, dealing with that. And then Moxley has been boys with Kingston, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting kind of, and the timing of this whole thing would be right around WrestleMania. You're starting to build some things. You know what I mean? The WrestleMania could be a very interesting weekend for AEW and for WWE, because I think there's a lot of things that are going to take place over that 2 weeks. Because I think AEW is not just going to give the weekend away. I think they're going to have a counterpunch. Whether it's a pay-per-view, I don't think they're going to have a pay-per-view the same weekend, but around it.
I don't think they're that stupid. I mean, you're not going to go up against WrestleMania.
No,
But I
lose,
think,
and they know that.
Yeah.
But I do think my point is, though, is that around that time, those we're going to have a good time as a fan. We're going to have a nice month.
Yeah, exactly. I think the between the build-ups and the actual shows, I agree. I 100% agree. Somebody, or they will, around that 2 week before, after something, they will throw something big to try to counterpunch it. I think, which would be the right move, right? Because especially around that season, right? I mean, WrestleMania, they're hyped about it, right? That you have all that build up, and you're just waiting for it, and you're so you're really into wrestling. You're really, you have these matches. Now you might have two builds up, right? You might have AEW plus WWE. So now you're looking forward to both things if they can swing hard. So the spring might very well be a very great time for wrestling fans.
Yep. Totally agree, man. Let's dive into the Darby Allin MJF match. MJF does get the nod and ends up getting the win. See, this is a storyline that I wouldn't mind. This can go forever. I truly believe that. I think MJF is that good of a heel. I think Darby Allin is that good of a face. I think these two guys can tell interesting storyline after interesting storyline. They're just two young guys that it feels so organic to me. It feels like young Shawn, young Razor, just two personalities that that are in the middle of the card right now, but are going to be at the top someday. It just feels like, they at any given moment. Now, MJF isn't the greatest in-ring performer as far as wrestler, but he's serviceable and he's entertaining as hell. Where Darby Allin is probably a much better wrestler. I don't know, man. I think these two, as far as I'm concerned, they can tell stories forever and always.
Yeah, very good matches. Darby Allin, the only thing I don't like, it's hard because you have two people that are on roll, right? They both have been winning matches. Darby Allin lost to CM Punk, but I mean, okay,
That's okay.
I mean, I
He
guess,
got the rub.
yeah, I get that doesn't hurt him at all, right? But it's like, all right, now Darby Allin's lost a couple in a row. Like, you gotta get some wins here, right? He's got to kind of build back up because you can't just have him losing every match either, right? But I
Yeah.
understand why MJF won. I mean, I literally told Des this earlier. We were watching, and I was just kind of catching her up. We were watching Full Gear Rewind this morning, and I was explaining to her some of them. Like, she knows of some of their faces, but doesn't know a lot. So we were kind of going through because we're going here in a week and a half to see them. So I wanted to make sure she was caught up. And I looked at her during that match, and I said, "These two are the future of this company."
Yep.
Right? Those two in a couple of years are going to be the face of that company. And I truly believe that. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of matches between them two in the next couple of years.
I already know Miss Borton is a huge fan of Darby Allin, right? She has to. He's got
She,
right.
she actually didn't see. She had just seen him once, but I really didn't know. So I was going through. So I think she doesn't have enough to base it off of. But I
Okay.
100% agree with you. Like, right when I seen him, I was like, yeah, she's gonna like him. Like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
yeah.
way that out of all people in AEW, she's gonna like Darby Allin.
Yeah, that's got a Des written all over it.
Yeah,
That's funny,
absolutely.
man. Um, we'll continue on here to some of the other things. So we've already kind of hit on it a little bit, but Miro versus Bryan Danielson. Um, they had a interesting match from what I read. And a classic, just kind of like aggressive, technical type thing. And then at the end, you get a winner in Bryan Danielson. And now Miro, who not too long ago was on top of the world. You talk about Darby Allin getting a couple losses. Now Miro's lost the TNT Championship. Now he's lost the chance to go after to be the number one contender. What was your thoughts on this booking with Miro taking the loss and Bryan Danielson, who doesn't need it, but he's here and he's a bigger name than Miro? Did they get it right? Is it better to have Bryan Danielson versus Adam Hangman Page rather than Miro versus Adam Hangman Page? Did they get it right?
I think you already know the answer to that. I mean, Miro, I mean, yeah, it's just, I don't know. For me, he doesn't have that it factor.
Yeah, we talked about
He,
this last week. Yeah.
right, exactly. So, it's very hard. That's one of those matches I honestly seen and I was like, okay, well, he's going to win. Right. And I
Yeah.
mean, there was not even really question. So I wasn't really even enthused by the match because unless Miro just all of a sudden won,
Mm-hmm.
I would be very shocked, if that happened. But I was 99% sure that wasn't going to happen. So I kind of already was like, okay, whatever, just kind of watching it. I thought it was pretty interesting how he won. But like I said, I think they're going to give him a title run. So I think they're going to let him do his thing. And then, these other people have been there for a little while. I think they'll cycle them in. But I think they're going to throw this at Daniel Bryan pretty soon.
Let's talk about Miro for a few seconds here. I know he's not one of your favorites. I get that, and I mean, if I had to rank him, he'd fall in the middle where he is now. But I think he's better than you give him credit for. With that being said, he's probably right where he should be. I mean, I think AEW's done a really good job of building him up. He was undefeated for a while, TNT champion, and now he's lost that. I absolutely think they dropped the ball when he lost it to Sammy Guevara. I really do. I am not a Sammy Guevara fan. I think there's a place for him, don't get me wrong, but I am not a huge Sammy fan. He reminds me of like the 1-2-3 kid. Like, I hated X-Pac. I hated him with a passion. I think he was highly overrated. I think he had funny moments and good moments. Don't get me wrong. There's good historical moments for X-Pac and 1-2-3 kid. Don't get me wrong. I could much more stomach him as the 1-2-3 kid than I could as X-Pac. But Sammy Guevara is just somebody that, like, I don't get. I don't get the Spanish God. I don't get it. But needless to say, AEW is backing him. They see something in him. And he might be somebody that I end up being wrong on, and I'll rightfully say that I am if that's the case. But Miro, and this is where I'm curious now, is Miro venturing into the same place that WWE had him? Because if you remember correctly, when Rusev first came out, he was a nonstop force who had a pretty damn good run in the beginning, United States champion. Lana had him as, on the mic. She had him built up every week. People were afraid of him. He got over. And then he kind of fell to irrelevancy. Is this where Miro's going? And if so, how did AEW do any better job with him than WWE? We're speculating here, but I'm asking you for your thoughts on that.
I think it's too early to tell. If Bryan Danielson doesn't come to AEW, does Miro win that spot?
That's a great question because I don't know who else would be in there facing him.
Exactly. So I don't think it's necessarily a knock to the middle. I think it's a, hey, he's probably more on borrowed time than you are in this business right now. And yeah, he's a bigger name. And so I think that he got the nod for that. I don't think that really knocks him down. But I think, a little bit of a rebuild up, but I think that you maybe have him go, eventually go back after Sammy Guevara, right? I think you maybe have Sammy Guevara go for a while, but I think you put him back in that title picture. I don't think that he's going to be around the AEW title picture right now, not currently with the with who they have in their caliber.
Yeah, I get that. I think AEW is. Let me ask this question before we move on to the last match that I want to talk about, and we'll get to honorable mentions because we're already halfway through the show. Does AEW know how to use big guys? It kind of feels like WWE only knows how to use big guys, and AEW doesn't. And it feels like there's like this massive flip where like if they were to come together, they would be like this perfect show. But like I don't know, because I don't see a big guy that really registers with me on AEW.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny that you said that because I 100% agree. I actually, I was telling a buddy at work that same thing. I said, it's funny because, who do you have? Jake Hager, you have, MGF, Wardlow, and
Murder Hawk
so
Lance.
Murder Hawk Lance. Yeah, and then Luchasaurus, right? You have a very few amount of big guys, and they're all kind of with factions, right? They're all kind of hidden within the factions. And I agree, it's the smaller guys, man, that really are AEW, and it's opposite of WWE because I agree, big guys are everything, right? They fit the mold of a John Cena, of a Brock Lesnar. I mean, that's what they want. They want them big Bobby Lashley looking guys that are just going to destroy everybody and anybody, right? And it's completely opposite for AEW. So I don't. Yeah, it's almost kind of like they don't know what to do with big guys, and WWE doesn't know what to do with little guys, right? I mean, it is. It does seem like that.
Very strange. It's very strange. I know that that guy that was in Taz's faction and that had the FTW belt there for a while. I forget his name. They did nothing
Hobbs.
with that guy. Hobbs. That guy, and nor should they. That guy has no personality. But like, I'm just saying, like, those big guys, they just take a back seat on that organization. All right, let's wrap up Full Gear if we can. The last one that I think I'm missing here. Actually, no, that was all of them I wanted to cover. You had some honorable mentions. What did you want to talk about? What did you see that is kind of that makes the list of the night for you as far as Full Gear goes? Guevara did have one hell of a spot. I'll give him that. He had that swanton bomb off the top of the ladder there.
Yeah, just there's a couple, the whole I thought the Adam Cole and the brothers, I can never remember their names. I don't know why it escapes me every time.
Bucks.
It's like one Young Bucks. I don't know why, but yeah. And Luchasaurus, Christian Cage, and Jungle Boy. I thought that was a good match, but I also think that you have a lot of really good people in that match, right? Jungle Boy, I think, is going to be again, I think he's gonna be a star in that company. A lot of talent. He has definitely some areas to work on. Right, he's young, but um, the um, the athletic ability of Luchasaurus, I think, goes underrated and unnoticed. He's a big guy and he can move really well. But I thought that was really good. I thought the whole thumbtack in the mouth and the super kicks,
Yeah.
that was very, I don't know. I've never seen that before. I don't know if you have,
Nope.
but I've never
Very
seen that
creative.
before. And I was like, ooh, like that made me cringe. And then they did the super kick. Before they even did the super kicks, I was like, oh, I couldn't imagine somebody shoving those in my mouth.
Yeah.
So it was a very cool spot. I thought there was some good things in that match. You know, um, I think there was some hit or miss spots within it, but I think we hit the big spots. To me, thought it was a good pay per view. Like you said, it had a couple low spots, but for the most part, a lot of matches, a lot of good spots, some dangerous spots. But overall, pretty good pay per view.
Pretty good pay-per-view, and I think we would be remiss if we did not mention the CM Punk, paying tribute, if you must say, to John
Oh,
Cena in the
I don't
middle of
know.
the
I
ring.
forgot that.
I don't know if it's tribute. I don't know if it's a little bit of just a little bit of gas on the fire. I know afterwards he was quoted saying that he just likes to start shit with, or he doesn't like to start shit. He just likes to kind of mix it up just to see what lands and get the people going. I don't think he meant any harm by it. So I think it's a cool little nod because he's on record saying that he never had beef with John Cena. It was never about John Cena. So. But yeah, we don't want to dive into that right now. Let's talk about WWE, what they have going on, and the best thing that they have going on right now. Actually, it might be the best thing in all of wrestling. We talk about this all the time, but it's now King Roman Reigns. I mean, he's not really the king. He hasn't been crowned by anybody other than his own tribal unit there. But what do you think? What did you think of Friday night, the way that ended? King Woods did get the W, though, and that was the first time, as you said to me, in 696 days, I think it was 600 and some days, where he actually took an L on
698.
698 days where Roman Reigns, since he took a loss on WWE programming. In this case, it was a DQ, but it was a loss is a loss. So what do you think? What did you think of Friday Night SmackDown with Roman Reigns?
Yeah, so very interesting. And I just want to say the 698, that actually, I didn't look that up. That came from my buddy Eric Swicky that had messaged me right after that. Interesting fact. I had not seen that. But it's kind of things like that you just don't even realize. It's like, how long it's been. And I'm like, holy crap, almost 700 days. It's interesting. It's almost one of those things is, do they really even know that or pay attention to that? Was it just something, in the storyline that they kind of did and it just happened to be that way? But I think it's very interesting that technically twice that they, almost had him beat and then something happens, right?
Yeah.
They DQs basically or things from the brothers. So I like it. I think that it just adds kind of another step to Roman Reigns of like, I mean, I know you can only build somebody so high, but I think that they've worked so hard and put so much investment over all the years to get him up there that they don't want to stop, right? They're trying to go as high as they can with him. But I think it's very interesting because I very much expected Big E to show up to ensue the rivalry for Survivor Series.
Yep.
And it's the New Day, that's his boys. So we really haven't had a lot of build up for Survivor Series at all, I feel like.
I think here's the issue. I think we just had the draft, right? And so many times WWE can really make a mess of something that they just do. And the last time around, I don't know if you remember this or not, but WWE did the draft. And then right after that, they got muddied. They kind of muddied everything. They're like, oh, we're going to bring in 4 superstars from each show every week, but no more than 4 and only if they're invited. And you're like, what? I thought they were drafted on SmackDown. Why are they on Raw? And it's
I
like
forgot about that.
they did that right after the draft, and they really muddied things. And you're like, wait, who's on what team? Why is this guy here? This is really, you can't do that. Your message has to be clear. And then they went and then the other kicker they did was like no more than 4 times in a year's calendar. It's like, who's paying attention to that shit? Nobody is.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is that I think they wanted and they want to keep Big E on his own show for as long as they possibly can. They don't want to muddy the waters with this. I do think Big E will make an appearance, and it will probably be that go-home show before. And that's probably, in my opinion, the way it should be right now. Because the champion versus the champion really writes itself. And I know the pay-per-view could be bigger. If you bring them in and you tell a storyline and leads up to it, totally can be. But nobody technically loses. Well, I say that. Roman Reigns getting beat 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring, that could be a loss for Roman Reigns in the future. But that would be an interesting thing. And we'll talk about that on our lead-in show to Survivor Series.
Yeah, very interesting things there. And I'm excited for that show to go into that. Yep.
But I think these champion versus champion, these traditional matches, they kind of write themselves. So, like, there's not a whole lot of build that you need to do because you're already kind of interested in how they're going to tell the story and who's going to get over on who. I'm more interested in the Becky versus Charlotte because of all the beef that they have with each other off camera. Are you caught up on this?
I, to an extent, I haven't really seen anything or looked anything up recently. Past week and a half maybe, but I haven't really heard anything about it of them having beef. I do know I read what I read a couple 3 weeks ago or so, 2.5 weeks ago, what had happened. But it is interesting to see what is actually going to happen between them. I know that there was a lot of talk about Charlotte, them not even really having Charlotte around or coming in and just doing like quick things and kind of keeping people away from her. And which, half that's all rumors. You don't know really what to believe in that. But there was, from what I've read, true beef there. So if there is, I think they're both professionals are going to go out there. But, I could see it, Charlotte just had this blow up with Nia Jax, right? And they started actually like really going at each other. And now there's this whole thing with Becky that's only a month and a half maybe after Nia Jax. And now you have 2 within a month or so of issues. So, does WWE start looking at that and saying, hey, you're kind of the common denominator here. What's going on? I don't know. But hopefully they can be professional and do what they need to do out there and give it for the fans.
I got to tell you, Dustin, they are playing with fire when it comes to Charlotte Flair. I'm not saying, look, I am not one for a company, an organization to pander to your superstars. I really not, in the sense of like, if they're not acting within the realm of what is right by the company and they're acting kind of going in for business on them for themselves and it's not justified, I'm not necessarily one for that. However, do you want to lose Charlotte Flair to AEW because overnight you would have legitimized your company in the girls and women's division? Overnight, if AEW was to obtain the biggest female wrestler star in the history of wrestling, that is without debate. Charlotte Flair is the greatest female wrestler in the history of professional wrestling. And you were to lose that star. Look what WWE's already lost and the amount of names that they've already lost. They've lost CM Punk, Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley. But to lose the greatest female wrestler in the history of wrestling to the other side in a division where they just put the belt on Britt Baker again, they kept it on her because there's so many stale women in that division. You give them a Charlotte Flair, ooh, buddy, I'm telling you, you don't want that to happen. So, with that being said, Becky Lynch was on a podcast this past week, and she was asked if her and Charlotte Flair are indeed friends, and she says absolutely not. And at one point, were you friends? Yeah, we were best friends. Do you have real life difficulties with her? She's quoted by saying, absolutely. She then went on to say, and this is Becky Lynch saying this, let's just say this. Sometimes you need a hero backstage, and more than once, I've had no problem standing up and being that hero when people need to be put in their place. That is her quotes. And that was in reference to Charlotte Flair. So there's some real legitimate, animosity there. And you're right. Charlotte Flair just showed her face on national TV where she wasn't, being quote unquote professional. I just wonder what happens in that ring. Maybe I'm buying too much into it, and the fanatic in me is saying, "Oh, they blurred the lines." But when push comes to shove, Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch try to get into a shove match in the middle of a national TV. I wouldn't want to be Becky Lynch on the end of one of those rights because it ain't Nia Jax.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah. No, I think there's lots of rumors actually that that they think eventually she's going to go there, and within a year or two. I mean, they're thinking pretty recent. Ric Flair's there, of course Andre's there. So, and they bring up some valid points. What does she need to do in WWE no more? She's already, like you said, the greatest of all time in general. But then in WWE, I mean, what does she need to prove, right? She can go work with completely different talent. And I agree, that would be a game changer for that division in AEW. If you put her, I mean, and honestly, I don't think Britt Baker's the greatest in the ring by all means, but I think it would be interesting to see them two go at it, right? And just see in general different talent share with her. And I think, with Charlotte Flair, because she's so good leading them females, I think you'll see a lot of growth out of them females.
Yeah. I got to tell you, and I just want to kind of go off of this because there's so many variables with this one, man. Charlotte Flair, and for the hopes that she ever comes on the Johnny Bang Bang show, I'm going to be as respectful as I possibly can when I say this, okay? I think in the past, Charlotte Flair has had some insecurities. We've seen some plastic surgery. We've seen some enhancements. We've seen some different looks, right? And I want to say this as respectful as I possibly can. I think that tend to comes from insecurities. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's real life issues there. Then for a long time, there was this insecurity with, am I going to find love? Now, I don't know her from anybody, so maybe I'm wrong. I'm just going off what I read. I'm just going off of the way it comes off on the internet. But it sounded like backstage there were some issues with, her and how much she's willing to kind of sell herself short for the person she loves. And she is in love with Andrade or El Delio or whatever his name is over there. She's in love with him. And my fear is that she would sell herself short to make him look better or to go where he is every week. Meaning she would have the short-sightedness to leave, in my opinion, the greatest era of women's wrestling in WWE with the biggest names. If you were to look at Charlotte and Becky and Sasha and Bianca and Rhea, you're talking about the same stacked cards such as Rock, Triple H, Austin, Michaels, Taker, Kane, Angle. I mean, this is my opinion, this is the best era of women's wrestling ever. And if she's to go to AEW where they don't have that, I think 3 months into her run, she's gonna be like, what the hell am I doing here? Maybe I'm wrong. But I totally think it's coming, Dustin. I think Charlotte Flair within 1 year's time will be a AEW superstar. And I'm not sure it's the right move for her.
Only time will tell. I think you're going to see it, and I think you're really going to find out if it is.
Yeah. Tough to tell. Tough to know. Well, to give my thoughts on the Roman Reigns thing that you were saying, though, is that at some point, are they still on the rise with Roman, or are they on the fall? What do you think? We got a guest? We got a surprise guest?
He was trying. He wanted to see what was going on. I'm sorry, I missed that. I was.
No, you're right. I was just talking. My opinion on the Roman Reigns thing, to get back to where we were, is that Roman Reigns. You're right. They continuing to throw more and more and make him bigger and bigger and bigger. In my opinion, he's still on the climb, even though he lost by DQ, and that's a statistic that I think it's okay that we didn't know about it because that means that his run hasn't been stale. Like, we're not ready for Roman Reigns' run to end. Like, sometimes you're like, oh my God, Brock Lesnar's had his belt forever. You know, I know you're not probably familiar with this, but in
Yeah.
02, Triple H had the belt forever. And it was like, this run has to come to an end. I'm not ready for Roman Reigns not to be the man.
I agree. I don't think there's. I mean, I just don't really know who would take it from him at this point. I mean,
Aha.
I think that right now, like, let him go, let him shine. Like, a lot of people have came on record, and I believe even CM Punk did recently, if I remember right. I remember hearing, I don't remember, but I remember hearing that I guess CM Punk came out and said that he named Roman Reigns as being like the top 3 best wrestlers right now. And like a lot of people were like, because there was a lot of animosity between not necessarily them, but the way that WWE was going and building certain people and blah blah blah, and obviously Roman Reigns got to push for everything back,
Yeah.
which was kind of the start of Roman Reigns, right? I mean, that was very early, but you could see it going in that direction. But I was kind of surprised that he said that. But I think Roman Reigns is who everybody wanted him to be years ago, right? Like you could see it. But I think turning him heel, I mean, that's what did it. They let him finally be himself. I read a thing that said that for over a year now, he's been talking. They're not writing a script no more. And I'm
They're
like,
just letting him go.
let him go, right? Let him, and you see that out of him. You see that we talked about this last week, the comments and things that he's saying. Nobody else is saying those kind of things, right? Nobody's getting away with it, but they're letting him talk. And he's getting that reaction because it feels raw, right? It
Right.
feels real. So I like where they're going. I don't think there's a reason to take the title off of him. I think he'll carry it all the way to WrestleMania, at least. But I agree with what you said. I think you're going to see probably Brock and Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. That is who I would guess right now.
You're saying Brock?
Yeah, I thought that's what you said last week. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I
yeah, I
think
think
it's
it's gonna be Brock and
Well, it's hard to tell because it's been touted that The Rock in Roman Reigns is going to be happening. And that's to fight for who the true tribal chief is. The problem is I don't want that for the belt. And if it is for the belt, then by God, The Rock has to lose, right?
yeah,
Like it,
yeah. I agree. He has to lose, but everything that I've read said that they don't think it's going to happen because they want it to happen in L.A. Is what
well,
everything
that's what
I've
I'm
read.
hoping for. But the question is, can
Yeah,
you? Okay,
I
okay,
think they will. Honestly, at this
Dustin.
point,
Let's say, bad case scenario. All right. Let's say Brock Lesnar wins the Rumble, which I hope doesn't happen. I don't think they would go that route. Okay.
he's
I don't
won it
want to.
once.
He's already won it once. I like
Yeah,
to see these up and comers. This is where a chance for you to build an up and comer, right? All right.
absolutely.
So let's say Brock fights Reigns at WrestleMania and Reigns wins. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We both agree right now, as we see it, that would be the best thing for business, unless we start seeing some other things from Brock. That would be the best thing for business. Here's the question. How the hell and who the hell is Roman Reigns going to fight for the next year to maintain that peak? I mean, the best, because if it starts falling flat, we're not as interested, right? So who and how is Reigns going to extend it for a full another year in order to keep our interest for The Rock? We'll be interested, but if we were to have Rock and Reigns this year, we'd be mega interested. How are they going to extend that? Because we've already said, who's left after Brock? Who's left? Randy Orton?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Who's left?
Does he need it? Yeah, I agree. You definitely have some players in there. I mean, you still have guys like AJ Styles and Randy Orton that can definitely hold their own, right? And they're in tag team divisions and they're kind of helping out younger talent, if you will, in that sense. So I think they're playing their own roles, but I think there's still guys out there that can compete with them, at least give them a good feud. Eventually I think that they're going to start a feud. I think one of the brothers, is going to split split from them, and I think that's when you're going to see The Rock come in, and you're probably going to have some tag team matches and things like that to build, and then you'll finally have the one-on-one between them, which
Okay.
is far down the road, right? That's probably a year from now, right? So you basically, I agree, have a year to fill. But I think you have Brock Lesnar in there. And, in 6-9 months, a lot can happen. You can have stars. I mean, look at Becky Lynch, like you said, the other night. That punch in the face elevated her
It did.
tremendously. And everybody knows it, right? You could have one punch in the face and just elevate somebody like no other, right? So I think there's a lot of time to tell. I think it's too early to really say at this point. And I think we'll get to the point, if that starts happening, that we'll know it's happening, right? And I think that we'll be able to see that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's gonna be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I will say this: you've got to fill 100,000 people 2 different nights in WrestleMania this year, because that is the biggest stadium in the country. As far as, I mean, I don't know how many people they're going to put in that. I'm not even sure where it's at. If it's in the new Ram Stadium in California, but you got to fill it twice. So that's going to be their challenge, because there was 101,000 people there for WrestleMania 32. When they go back to these places, they want to break the record. So you got to get at least 102,000 people there on back-to-back nights. We'll see. I don't think it's hard. Roman, it's going to be tough, buddy.
I don't think so. Not with The Rock. He's the most followed person.
No. That's The Rock, though, and that's where they are this year. So I'm saying, does Brock versus Roman, is that big enough of a match at WrestleMania 38 this year to pack the house? I think it is. I'm just asking you. What do you think?
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were.
Because they're in Dallas this year.
Yeah, they're in Dallas. Yeah. So, yeah, I think so. I think, again, Brock brings enough, and I think Roman Reigns is, he's getting more and more talk show appearances and things like that. He's been on the Ariel Helwani show and things like that. He's getting a lot more exposure than he used to. So I think that, it's definitely building. Brock is Brock, right? He already has, everybody knows pretty much who Brock Lesnar is, right? If you will, from Pat McAfee, he's the alpha male. So a lot of people know him, right? And so I think, you bring that in. And I'll be honest with you, I think, and I don't know when it will be, but a lot of people are forgetting that Ronda Rousey, I think, is going to come back at some point, right? And
she made her debut
you have a lot of
Dallas.
stars. Oh, did she? I did not know that.
Yep.
So I think she's coming back. She had the baby. That's what she left for. She wanted to have a kid. I think eventually, she's going to take her time for sure, I think. But I think, again, you're going to, I think she has that itch for that physical, hitting somebody, throwing somebody around. I think that's just kind of her naturally. So I think you're going to see her back in WWE. And I think that, again, that's going to be some star power that they're probably going to throw at you.
Yeah, that's a good call. I've been waiting for that Ronda comeback for a long time now, because I thought her first run was actually pretty damn good. But we're getting kind of long in the tooth here, man. We're 58 minutes into the show. I kind of want to wrap us up at the hour point if we can.
Yeah,
a lot we didn't get to. Your quick thoughts on, is they turning Kevin Owens? Is he going heel? What's going to happen with him real quick? What do you think? Is he joining up with the Architect and the Messiah?
I don't know. And honestly, that one kind of throws me off, because I feel like it was too obvious that he was going to do that. And I just don't feel like that would be that. It just seems too easy.
Yeah.
And I don't
think
feel
it's going to happen.
WWE's like that. I don't know. That just doesn't seem like their play. So I don't know if they're really going to do that. I think it's they have a different something up their sleeve. But they're doing something with him. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just glad they're doing something with him, because I really like Kevin Owens, and I think that they don't utilize him at all. I think that he puts it out on the line every time. He's entertaining. He's good on the mic. He's very athletic for his size. I very much am a huge Kevin Owens fan. So I'm glad that he's finally in the main event matches, and he's finally getting that exposure around the title again. So I'm just honestly glad. I hope that they do what's right, whether it's turning him heel or face. I just hope that they do right by Kevin Owens, because he is another one that has been highly talked about, because of where he's been at, that he's going to skip
Jumping
town and
ship.
go to AEW. Because,
Yeah.
and again, if he does and they use him right, I think that he has the skills to be a top guy over there, which I know that they're going to get to a point where they're going to be stacking so many guys. They're going to have to do something about that at some time and start thinning out a little bit, right? There at some point, they can't just keep taking guys, right? They're going to have to
Right.
start thinning. But those kind of guys that you want to help lead your business are guys like Kevin Owen that are die-hard fans first, and they will do anything for this business.
Yes.
Right? Those are the guys you want leading.
Yeah, you can only have him fight Sami Zayn so many times. And as much as I'm a fan of Sami Zayn, you just can only have them fight each other so many times.
Yeah.
So, like, I will say this. Kevin Owens feels a little stale to me. I like him. Don't get me wrong. I still love Kevin Owens. He hasn't had much of a character change since maybe Jericho left. You know what I mean? He used to be uber entertaining with Jericho, and then he went on his run where he was heel or face for a while. And kind of last year's WrestleMania match with Seth Rollins, when he won, I just didn't think that propelled him to anything, really. It kind of fell flat. And I just haven't seen much out of him since. So, but that happens. Guys go up, guys go down. It's time for him maybe to work his way back up, and we'll see what comes of it. But, hey, man, lots and lots always left on the meat or the bone for us. Yeah. It's something that we'll have to dive into. I want to introduce something next week with you and to our fans here, is that we're going to start introducing this segment of the show where I don't know, we'll name it yet, but it's going to be Relive a Moment. And because our friend Dustin has no idea what happened in the world of wrestling prior to the Attitude Era, which is okay. We're going to relive things that had happened last week all the way through, the territory days, and just kind of get his reaction. And maybe you and I can just sit back and rewatch some of the things that we thought were great and relive those moments and just have some fun on the show. We'll start that up next week. So.
Absolutely. It'll be a blast. Can't wait.
All right, buddy. Dustin, any final words?
No, not really. Just looking forward to the week. I think we got a really good week coming up here. And, Thanksgiving week, got a lot of action between football and wrestling. So it's going to be a really, I think, fun week coming up in a week and a half or so. So I'm excited.
What is it you're looking forward to with wrestling the most this week? If you had to pick a show right now, which one are you looking forward to the most?
Probably Dynamite. Okay. I think because they're coming off a pay-per-view, and a lot of the times pay-per-view before or at the pay-per-view or after is usually when some big things happen. And I'm very much excited to see the reaction that Adam Hangman Page gets, and because I think he deserves it. So I'm very interested in that and to be able to see the response. So I would say that would be the show I'm looking forward to.
I hope he gets booed out of the damn building, baby. I'm just joking. I'm not in the Lifetime Achievement Awards, so we'll see. He's too early to be getting one of those, but if the time is right and they feel that's what was necessary, we'll see if he's the right man for the job. I honestly like the guy. I don't love the guy. We'll see. I don't love the whole – he reminds me of a modern-day Diamond Dallas Page, and I was a huge Diamond Dallas Page fan. He was this mid-card guy that kind of deserved to be in the main event at times, and at times it didn't feel like he deserved to be there. We'll talk about that another day. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been watching us, to the 54 of you that watched us last week, man, thank you. That was awesome. Hopefully we can just we're just kind of throwing mud right now to see what sticks, and maybe we'll grow a show out of it. But I know it's a blast for Dustin. It's a blast for me, and hopefully you guys enjoy what you've been listening to. But we'll see you guys on down the road. We did it.